I'm Brett Bursey, Director of the South Carolina Progressive Network. For 25 years, we've been working to educate the people and the politicians about the shortcomings of letting your public policy be determined by private profit. The policies that are now being implemented in South Carolina by the governor and by the Department of Health and Environmental Control were designed by the fast food industry, the hospitality industry, and the other corporations that make their money on wage workers and service industries. And I say that with all information, empirical data on who gave the campaign donations and who was appointed to be on the governor's Accelerate Task Force. accelerateSC was designed to put South Carolina back to work, but there were no workers on it. It was the employers, mostly relevant to the chain stores that own all the fast food joints in South Carolina, that determine the state policy. So if you work for a place and you want to wear a mask because the governor said you should wear a mask, and the health department said you should wear a mask, and your boss says you can't wear a mask, it scares the customers, you can get fired, because that's the law in South Carolina. Fire at will, fire any reason. He says, John didn't obey me, he's fired. And then he calls the Department of Employment and Workforce and tells them that John got fired, and John loses the unemployment insurance payments that he has earned. And so not only do you not get protected, not only do you get fired, you lose your unemployment insurance in South Carolina. And so what we have done yesterday is send a letter to the board of the Department of Health and Environmental Control was for today's meeting. The July 9th monthly meeting of the DHEC board during a pandemic has once again been canceled. They haven't had a meeting since March, I believe, and their next meeting is in August. So we've asked for an expedited emergency hearing to consider four things. One, that an immediate order, DHEC order, requiring mandatory adherence to the agency's COVID-related guidelines. Two, clear stipulations that businesses shall not be allowed to operate without following DHEC's COVID-related guidelines. Three, employees shall not be fired for following DHEC's COVID-related guidelines. And four, employees shall not lose unemployment insurance payments if they are fired for following DHEC's COVID-related guidelines. All sounds quite reasonable, and it's actually the law. So if we can't get DHEC to respond, we'll be talking to a court and pointing out that the governor's emergency declaration that he issued in an executive order, most recently on June 11th, cited Section 44.4500 of the State Code of Laws that regulates DHEC in an emergency. And the first sentence, when there's an emergency declared by the governor, DHEC shall, during a state of public health emergency, DHEC must use every available means to prevent the transmission of infectious disease and to ensure that all cases of infectious disease are subject to proper control and treatment. Now, the governor says he can't do this. It would be unconstitutional to tell people what to do, and even no way to enforce it. Well, Section 44.5530 says failure to comply with these rules constitutes a felony, and you can go to jail. And that applies to the owners of the business that don't follow the DHEC rules. Not only could they go to jail, but DHEC can issue a quarantine order and close their business, and anybody that goes there would be guilty of a felony. There's plenty of written laws on the books for decades that actually were designed for such an instance. But that was before we let the corporate interests determine our public policy. We want testimony from workers or their families in situations where they feel threatened that the guidelines aren't being followed at their workplace, or they're actually being told they can't follow them. We want to take affidavits. We can protect your identity. Don't want you to get hurt further. But get in touch with us if you're in this situation.